Marcus, thank you so much. I think you did an amazing job to give us an overview in just, I don't even think it was 10 minutes to give us an idea of the large scale importance payments play today. And as we see, and I think this is really striking, payments is for years now no longer simply a transaction from person A to person B, but it has become so much more, be it via PSD2 and other developments. I think we are really just probably at the start of something even greater. And I think what you just indicated, the valuations of the companies really, shine a light on where the journey is going to take us. And because it's more interesting to discuss it with more people, I'm now very happy to welcome our other co-panelists for the next 40 minutes. Hey there, happy to have you. It's really an international panel, which I'm happy we can take advantage of this since we are streaming our entire conference digital. First of all, I would like to welcome Sonia Scott, who is Vice President for Global Commercial Services at American Express. Hi, Sonia. Great to have you here. I also want to welcome Wanda Estfeller. She's sales lead DACH, so for German, Austria, and Switzerland for a fintech called Molly. Hi, Wanda. Great to have you. And yeah, we also have our international guest here who just tuned in from Brazil. It's really great to have you, Vinicius. You are Chief Economist and Regulatory Affairs Executive from a from a fintech called Stone. Yeah, maybe to kick this off and continuing on a few points Marcus just raised in his opening discussion. I would like to play a little game, and I hope it turns out interesting. So if we look really 10 years back, where the smartphone was just on the rise, with your experience in the field of payments, what were back then the challenges, and do some of them still apply for today? I think it would be interesting to get your view on this, and maybe briefly introduce yourself with a sentence, and what you are specialized in the fields of payment. Maybe starting with Sonia. What are your views on this?
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be on the panel. So I've been in the credit card business for a very long time, started off at Citibank, then Banco Santander, and I've been with Amex for 18 years on the issuing side as well as on the acquiring side. And if I look back 10 years ago, a challenge that we still see in Germany particularly is that there is a tendency to pay small amounts with cash. And that's something, when I look back 10 years ago, that was a challenge. And also, if I look back 10 years ago, I would have never envisaged that we now here in a world that we use Apple Pay as a payment. And if we look at our numbers at Amex, looking back into 2019, that's when we had an NSC rate of 38%, and now we just hit the rate of over 80% NSC payments. And that's a great development. I would have never envisaged this to happen. And I hope we're going to go further and it stays beyond the pandemic.
Thanks, Sonia, for this great intro. Maybe Wanda, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yeah, as you mentioned, my name is Wanda. I'm representing Molly today, so a Dutch fintech on the way to become Europe's most loved PSP. So we're growing the DACH market very strongly at the moment. And what we are doing is we're enabling especially small and medium-sized businesses to become way more digital. Of course, last year with the pandemic, shops being closed, this was a huge opportunity, of course, for us to support the market, to support also small and medium businesses with a very neat and very fast solution. So you're really able to start processing your online payments within a day. Yeah, I've been with Wirecard before, so I'm also in the payment industry, the very famous Wirecard. I've been in the payment industry for 10 years now. And yeah, very excited to be here. And yeah, when it comes to mobile payments, so thinking online. So the very first challenges, of course, like this move from the desktop to your couch and really purchasing on your phone. The payment methods just made the difference. So as soon as like Apple Pay came up, we've seen a huge increase in mobile acceptance. Of course, PayPal was one of the first, enabling a really easy checkout without you having to get up, take your credit card out, type in the long credit card number, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And at the point of sale, so one of my experiences also that this enabling Wi-Fi in stores was also one very large step of even like using your mobile phone in store.
Thanks for the introduction, Wanda. Over to you, Vinicius, and maybe you take a few extra seconds or even a minute, because I think not all in our audience may be familiar with your startup, since you're based in Brazil. So Vinicius, what is your view? What has happened in the last 10 years? What is still relevant? And what are you doing?
Very nice to be here. Thank you so much. So my name is Vinicius Carrasco. I've been in this industry for 3 years. So I guess I'm the youngest in terms of experience in the payment industry. I have an academic background. I was a researcher at a Nikon department here in Brazil. I took a year as an executive officer in our National Development Bank, and then I decided to join this payment company, which is Stone, and Stone has a lot to do with what has going on in Brazil over the last 10 years. So 10 years ago, we had very expensive and bad services in payments. So for instance, we had one acquirer per card scheme. So Visa was only acquired by one acquired, Master was only acquired by another acquirer. So there was a lot of regulatory innovation that opened up this market and other markets, and Stone came about because of this regulatory innovation. So non-banking acquirers were allowed to serve merchants, and that's what we've been doing over the last 6 years now.
Thanks so much for the introduction. Happy to have you. Keeping with our first theme, innovation. Markus, maybe back to you, as it gave us this very broad overview. What do you think from your experience, consulting different clients of BCG? We don't need innovation for the sake of innovation. So what maybe if we think of what's in it for the consumer, but also what's in it for the businesses, what is your view on that?
I think for the consumer, if I compare just how consumers have paid 10 years ago and how they can pay today, right? They have a much richer set of payment methods available, and they are using that commonly. So I think one benefit of innovation is the choice of different payment methods. Another benefit is certainly the convenience, how they can pay, right? I think about contactless card payments, but also mobile payments has made it really convenient for the consumer at the point of sale. And if I think about buy now, pay later, for example, that's a very convenient payment method online. So I think that's for the consumer very relevant. I think for the merchant side, of course, payments is really an important way that needs to be fully integrated into the customer journey, be that in the store or be that online. And I think payments is a key enabler for the merchant, right? Number one, to drive sales conversion. Number two, to better understand consumer behavior. And number three, then also to offer personalized products or to manage customer loyalty.
Speaking of merchant benefits, Wanda, you're pretty much concerned with the e-commerce business. What change have you seen, and where do you still see potential in that area?
Yeah, first of all, like yeah, especially like the choice of payment methods. A lot of things have happened in the last 10 years, if we're talking about 10 years now. So a lot more added, some appeared and then again disappeared. So I think the biggest challenge is really to, first of all, understand also what do my customers need. So the end customers, what are they asking for? So maybe am I targeting, so I'm going to be super superficial now, am I targeting young people, old people? What am I selling in the end? So am I selling like couches? Maybe somebody will be more likely to buy a couch on a desktop computer than on a mobile phone sitting on a couch. So really understanding what the customer base needs and also what the market I'm targeting really needs. So speaking of local payment methods, how do I select the correct ones for me? And also sometimes you really see a checkout and then you have like a list of payment methods and 3 different buy now, pay later providers. So this is of course nice to have the choice, but in the end, is it really providing that benefit that you would like to see, or is it just like distracting and looking very ugly in the checkout? Yeah, so this is still very basic, but still a challenge.
So would you say then it's also about making things simpler, less fragmented,
Yeah.
and just less complex for the end
Yes.
consumer? I think that's
Yeah,
interesting.
definitely. So very
Sorry.
flawless checkout, and also very important, like from a design perspective, a very nice looking checkout. I mean, at the beginning with the also PCI certified payment pages, I mean, we've seen stuff that I think nobody today would ever like input their credit card number in that payment page anymore. So creating confidence and also security, but also providing a really nice experience. I mean, the payment is in the end the confirmation that whatever you have been doing before that really worked. So it's a small part, but it's crucial, of course.
Of course, a very crucial one, the checkout. I guess it's the most crucial one for our merchants. Speaking of consumers, Sonia, you mentioned that the pandemic has moved us, I think, a few steps forward in Germany. Where I said earlier, we may not be the front runner compared on a global scale when it comes to digital future modern payment solutions. So maybe what's your view on how you as a company, or what has to be done to just create a different mindset, so to really get the field of payments even more thriving from a consumer perspective?
If I just add on what Vanda's mentioned, there are certain regulatory pieces that we have to implement properly and to the ease of the customer. Take, for example, SCA, so strong customer authentication. It's a huge investment for each company to go through this. But also what we try to do at Amex is, for example, we enable the customer to do whitelisting. So they can put certain merchants on a list so that it doesn't have to go through all the process and it's automatically routed through. So that's one point. Additionally, it's always the customer chooses how they want to pay. And if I was a merchant, I would offer as many payment methods as possible just to give them this choice. Of course, if I speak for Amex, I hope that our customers use the Amex card because they can earn bonus points. So either it's membership rewards or it's payback points in Germany. So that's an additional feature, that payment is a bit more than just paying. It's also rewarding yourself. So it's more than just the payment journey itself. I think there's a lot tech, marketing, lots of pieces that add to this payment stream nowadays.
I think that's very interesting, and I just in a few minutes I also want to focus on partnerships. I think where this is also pointing toward, but maybe back to Brazil. Vinicius, you mentioned just a few years ago, the market basically wasn't even there. There was like hardly any choice for the consumer, or maybe for merchants. From your perspective, what has changed, and in how far focusing on the ecosystem you're enabling in terms of the merchants using your products, what has changed for them?
So a lot has changed. So first of all, as you said, now the merchant has plenty of options in terms of who can provide services in terms of the way they make their sales and receive their payments. So we had only 2 players pretty much, and now we have hundreds of players. So it's been fantastic how competition took place and kicked in. So lower rates, lower fees, better services, and all the consequences of competition. On top of that, we have seen a lot of additional regulatory innovations. So the Brazilian Central Bank just launched an instantaneous payment system, so PIX, and it really, made a huge difference. So an open, interoperable system managed by the central bank. So now on top of Master, Visa, Max, and other schemes, Brazilian schemes will have PIX. So, the merchant has yet another option. And we at Stone, we have the mission to make, first of all, the SMB sell more and enabling the SMB to receive all those different forms of payment is essential. But not only that, so it has to, sell, make payments, and reconcile, manage its business. So we try to combine payment services with software and tools for their management. So this is pretty much what we're doing, and we're doing very well in this respect.
That's great to hear, and I think it's also very interesting that you mentioned this instant payment scheme that's going to be developed, because actually we just talked about it from a European point of view, and I think it's so important always, to widen your scope and not always be only concerned with Europe, but also look what it's happening in different parts on the world. Marcos, which brings me maybe back to BCG. You mentioned a few trends. We heard something about the market is still very fragmented to some point. Maybe at some stage it's overwhelming for the consumers just to pick the right payment choice, or to come up for merchants with a nice looking UX and a simple checkout process. So in your experience, if you think about better user experience, better integration of payments in our daily routines, what do you think are the most important steps or problems to solve for payment service providers or for merchants?
Yeah, I think merchants, just to start with them, they want to make sure that payment is as much seamless as it can be, right? So I think we still have people that, for example, shop online, and then when it comes to the checkout, they have to choose a payment method, and then maybe they start with a card payment, and then strong customer authentication comes into play, and then they cannot come through, right? And then they choose a different method, for example, then maybe they choose the first time buy now, pay later. That's then also difficult because there is no on the buy now, pay later method, maybe no consumer check available since the first transaction and things like that. So I think one really important aspect for merchants online is to make payments as much seamless as possible. Yeah, that's a technology aspect. That's also an aspect of offering the right payment methods for the particular country, as we know that there are huge differences in preferences across Europe. So that's, I think, on the merchant side. And then maybe another aspect on the merchant side is how to go beyond payments. Yeah, what are value-added services that I can offer to the consumer in consumer finance, in managing customer satisfaction and loyalty. I think that's maybe on the merchant side. Yeah, and I think on the consumer side, a key question is, I think Sonia mentioned that in the beginning, that we have seen a tremendous shift in consumer behavior during the pandemic, and it will be a question of whether that sustains. Yeah, I think it's also a matter of how you educate the consumer. I'm just taking a personal example, right? The bakery around the corner has never offered card payments very actively. During the pandemic, there were signs in front of please transact contactless, use your card or your mobile, right? So I think it's on the consumer side also a question of how educated are the consumers, how willing are they then to sustain that behavior. And I think here also the merchants can contribute a lot to make the payments really easy for the consumers.
I think that's a
If
good
I may
point.
add, I think I hope that the learning was also during the pandemic that the long beloved cash is something you can do without, and that it's because cash also has cost, and I think that's sometimes forgotten. And so hopefully, to your point when you say it stays, I do hope so as well, that we stay in this great development that I don't even have to take my wallet anymore. I just take my phone and pay, and that's wonderful.
Sonia,
For
maybe
people
as
who
a
don't like cash.
Sonia, maybe as a follow-up, because I think this is very interesting as we always have a look at who's triggering change. Is it the end consumers, us going shopping for groceries or similar? But have you also seen a change within the field of merchants? Do they finally start understanding how important modern, convenient and secure payment methods are? And do you think now we see a shift to the top in terms of that? Do you see there is a movement there that's going to stay?
Yes, I think there was a lot of movement over the past years. It came with the again, it was regulation started it with the interchange fee regulation, that it became more attractive for merchants to accept cards, and I think they got to learn and love that cards make life easier. And so I think that's something that's here to stay, because if I look at our world, I think the merchants really see that cards can bring additional value as well, because normally if you pay with a card, your shopping basket is bigger than if you pay with cash. And so that's something that's appreciated. And the seamless payment with mobile phones now, and maybe even additional loyalty programs that are put onto this payment journey, are something I think that merchants see now as a great asset. And also look at the pandemic, lots of merchants had to go online. There you had to have an acceptance of non-cash, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be credit cards, it can be whatever you say, Sofortüberweisung, so the peer-to-peer payments, which is an interesting concept as well, and has worked well in Sweden for a long time with Swish, for example. So other markets or other areas in Europe are much more advanced. And also banks look at it and say, how can I cover up the costs? So it's free for the consumer, but if you are a company, you get charged for the payment. So there's a lot that has evolved over the past years, and it's a great place to be in at the moment in the payment industry.
That's great to hear. Maybe Wanda, you want to pick up the ball. Have you seen some developments, or also see maybe new segments of customers you wouldn't have expected to implement your service?
Yeah, so maybe just to pick up what the others also said. So even before the pandemic, we've seen a lot of change also in retail, in the retail business. Like when people started to scream, yeah, retail's dying, the cities are empty, nobody's going shopping anymore, everything is happening online. This also again triggered like a change, and suddenly the retail business, like the brick and mortar, was relevant again, but not for this classical shopping. Hey, I'm going like to browse a little bit, but more to like experience something, to get an inspiration on certain products, to feel, touch, smell what's happening basically. So the retail spaces became more like this. Hey, how can I create a really nice? How can I put like really the smell and feel, and how does my product actually feel to experience, and not only to get the customers in to buy something and to leave again. And also there, like in terms of payments, like when merchants started to see, hey, maybe I can take some of the benefits that e-commerce is really bringing, no queuing, always having products available, no matter what size or color you're looking for. These were like the basics where then retailers really started to think, so how can I use some of the things that I know from e-commerce and really bring them back to the retail store? This is when then tablet-based solutions came, for instance, in play, mobile terminals that you could carry around to avoid queuing, for instance, endless aisle solutions, stuff like that. So it really became a change, and then suddenly, of course, pandemic stopped at the retail. So again, moving back to e-commerce, and yes, we've definitely seen some new things like popping up. Of course, like small businesses suddenly becoming very creative. I've seen small bookshops that have like a sign, you can pay with PayPal, stuff like that. So just showing like the email address, and you can really send some money, and that's it. So little things, but this is all changed. And then of course also bigger companies, if we look into B2B, for instance, that usually sell products that you wouldn't maybe buy online, but still like extending for spare parts or additional products, or like I'm thinking of this like washing machines that can basically order, where you can order everything online, or the washing machine even orders it for you. So all these kind of businesses that you haven't seen like really going online, we're suddenly looking for solutions.
Thanks, Wanda. Maybe Vinicius, what I think we all would be interested in, what's like the situation in Brazil? As you probably have heard, Germany is in the transition from being a very cash reliant country to becoming more digital savvy. What's the situation like in Brazil? Is it similar, or are you more open to e-commerce per default? So what maybe have been the biggest shifts through the pandemic within Brazil you've noticed through Stone?
Yeah, I guess customers in Brazil were always very digital. So mobile phones are used hugely. WhatsApp, Facebook on the phone, and all this kind of stuff. So the Brazilian customers was always very digital. And in terms of payments, despite the fact that it was very expensive to pay or to receive payments using credit cards because of those monopolies I mentioned, the customer used a lot of cards, because we have this arrangement in Brazil of buy now, pay later. So this is a very useful mechanism to induce consumption through credit cards. So the combination of these two things always made electronic payments very widely used, despite being expensive for merchants. Our focus here at Stone are SMBs, and our view is that SMBs should get digital ASAP, and the pandemic has advanced this view very rapidly. So now we see every brick and mortar merchant selling online, using e-commerce, and of course having to accept means of payments which are electronic. So we started from a very digital starting point, and pandemics even accelerated this process further. So I guess we're heading towards a cashless society. So even a digital currency project is being discussed here by the central bank.
It's very interesting to hear, but very still interesting that it still have similar problems or the same goals. Maybe we don't have that much time left. And another issue another topic I would be really interested in is, yesterday we had a panel or a fireside chat on embedded finance. So the idea is to actually bring the financial solutions as close to the consumer as possible. Markus, maybe what is your view how the payments market gonna develop? I mean, we see some shifts and some more partnerships and cooperations through PSD2, through open banking and open finance movements. But what do you think is the future of payments? Do you think we are maybe moving toward a situation where actually consumer doesn't actually pay, but just, you know, shop, put everything in his card, digital, or actually in a physical store, and it just the money gets just booked from his account. Where do you think we are heading in terms of making payments really integrated and seamless?
Yeah, I think what you describe, Kevin, is something that with the Amazon to go grocery stores is more or less already reality, right? Consumers can go in, just tap their phone in the beginning, the app, then they shop whatever they like, they check out, they get a receipt almost seamlessly a few minutes after the shopping, and the amount is charged to the virtual account, yeah, or the virtual credit card. So I think we technology-wise we're already there, right? For me, it's a question how fast will that be adopted on a larger scale, right? That's a question of how much are retailers, for example, or stores willing to invest into the technology, and the other question is how fast will consumers adopt, right? We have talked a lot about what happened in the last 10 years, yeah, but let's not forget that that some of the innovations that are now very common, yeah, to pay with the mobile phone, have also been available technically quite a long time, and it took time to educate the consumer to make them really use these new payment methods. So I think technically we're there, to your questions, to integrate that. It's possible. Question will be how much are consumers willing to adopt that on a large scale, and how much are retailers, shops, stores really willing to invest into the technology and embed it, or are they saying we're good with the systems that we are having, right? There are other areas to invest in. I think that are the questions that I would see here.
It's very interesting, Markus. Maybe Sonia, you as one of the large international schemes, how do you perceive such future prospects in terms of maybe like more moving away from a physical product like a card and more becoming like a process? And you indicated partnerships. How do you see your role or the payments role within the next years?
I think in the end, it's the customer who chooses. And as you said, Markus, it's even if people were hesitant in the past to do contactless or use their phone, they're used to it now, and it becomes the new normal. And so I think there is you don't have a choice not to invest. You have to invest, and you have to provide capabilities that make the life of our customers easier. So whether it's going to be apps or whether it's products. So for me, it's not the physical card. If I look at our Prime portfolio, of course, a Centurion card holder, Platinum card holder will probably most likely still want to have that card. But if it's whatever the customer decides, and it's the value proposition about the product, what is in it for the consumer or the business, and that'll make all the difference. And for us as a big company, we're always looking to collaborate with startups as well, because Markus mentioned it. It's if you invest, we have legacy systems as well, as many big companies have. So ideally, we combine our brand name and the trust that customers have in us with some really agile startups that can help us do some plug-and-play solutions that are convenient. So for me, the future is it's all going to be about partnerships, and it'll be hit and miss as well. But because we're not going to find this one startup or this one solution that's going to work. Look how many solutions are out there. In the end, the customer lands on one, hopefully on various ones, and decides. And we have to be there and ready.
But I think that's just a great and honest approach, Sonia. Thanks for sharing this. And we have become also a strong believer that the partnerships actually bring valuable profits to all participants along the value chain. So we just briefly touched upon what the future's gonna bring. Maybe for a short round to finish up our discussion, we try to look 10 years back, and now comes the question no one has the right answer for. What's gonna happen in 10 years? So let me put it differently for your final statement. What is needed, be it regulatory, be it from the business landscape? One sentence from your side, what we need to actually have a competitive payments landscape, also in comparison to the US, to South America, to Asia. What is needed in your eyes? Maybe Wanda, you want to go first.
Sure. Yeah. So when we look, to China, for instance, or even the US, so many really for us Europeans, especially Germans, they're doing crazy things, paying with their faces and whatsoever. So of course we have it here in Europe, again, and especially in Germany, the GDPR topic. So we're all about data. So this is going to be one very, very important thing. So how are we gonna deal with that in the next 10 years? And then again, the question, are the solutions that the Asians are used to, that are using, is that really something that we really should pursue, or should we find our own way of dealing with these things in harmony with GDPR? Maybe we'll find some peace with GDPR at some point.
Thanks, Wanda. Maybe Vinicius, in your eyes, one sentence, what is needed to actually get your ecosystem going or even improve better?
Yeah, I guess keeping up with this view that regulation is key to open up markets. So leveling the playing field, so to allow entry. And this involves lots of things, not only rules, but access to infrastructure, for instance. So this instantaneous payment system, the infrastructure is held by the central bank and it's open, so everyone can plug in and offer services. So innovative regulation, access to infrastructure, and data. And I think that these are the three pillars that will be needed for even more competition over the next 10 years. And from the point of view of a player, of a service provider, I guess you need to be flexible enough, because it's hard to foresee what will come. So you have to be agile, so to adjust and adapt.
Thanks, Vinicius. Maybe back to you, Sonia. You just pinpointed to a few facts. What would be on your wish list, or what are the most pressing issues we have to deal with as Europeans in the payments market?
Well, it's three things for me. It's a level playing field for all for all companies entering this market. It's solutions that that the transposition of the regulation is not so different in each market. In my new role now, because I'm heading up many European or continental European markets, I share a lot of frustration with my colleagues that if regulation is laid out to give us a level playing field, to give market entries a chance and to speed certain processes up, I'm always stumbling over this different transposition. Every market in the end they have a little twist to what the regulation intended, and that makes it difficult for companies who want to be work across many markets to really be quick. Because if I have to have lots of bells and whistles for every different market, that's important. And that's to the last point, or third point, I find it difficult that Europe also wants to establish now their own solution again as a alternative to the big schemes, which is of course possible. But again, we shouldn't forget, we don't have customers just in Europe. The world is open. So you have to make it possible to give the customers a chance, if they use a European payment scheme in the future, that they can also use it outside of Europe.
Thanks, Sonia. I think this discussion needs to take place at another time. Marcus, I haven't forgotten about you, as we are running out of time. So much has been said what we need in the next 10 years. Is there one thing you would like to add on the list, or would like to emphasize, which is needed to drive us forward?
I make it really short, Kevin. Yeah, I think a lot of innovation you've seen in the last 10 years has come from the young players, from the fintechs. Yeah, let's not forget the incumbent players, the banks, for example. They all have also great assets, right? They have a strong customer base. They are trusted by the consumers. Yeah, they own the account-to-account payment infrastructure. So I would really hope that a lot of innovation in the next 10 years will come from partnerships between the younger, more innovative players with the incumbents in the market, right? And from these partnerships, we see new developments and innovations.
Markus, I think all of us can subscribe to that. Thanks for that. And I think it perfectly wraps up, in our view, how important the ecosystem is as such. Markus, Wanda, Sonia, and Vinicius, I want to thank you so much for taking your time today, talking about the important topic of innovation in payments. And I'm pretty sure we're going to catch up in a couple of months again and hope to see you soon. And now I want to wish you a great evening.